Welcome to If Prices Could Talk. Let me set up introductions and then I can give a bit more context about the episode. So, Travis is a new face to the podcast, but not new to Holden Advisors. So, thanks for being here, Travis.
Happy to be here. This is great. Great opportunity.
All right. So, Travis is a facilitator. He leads our backbone workshops. He's been with Holden for many years. And then if you watch the podcast, you know Pete Morelli. Pete is our vice president of sales strategy, and Jeet Mukherjee, who is our chief strategy officer. So thank you, everybody. Let's start with high level this episode. We wanted to get together to talk about commodities. So commodity pricing, especially negotiations in the commodity space. I'm using quotes because we'll get into some myths around this. But our starting place with this, let's talk about this as a tactic for negotiations when buyers or procurement tell people that they're a commodity or that they're selling a commodity. So maybe we start with you, Travis. Can you talk a bit about how you've seen this play out with buyers kind of playing poker and bluffing to get a deal?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons that this came up is because some of the workshops that we do or work with companies that are in the commodity space. One of the things that poker players will do is try to convince the supplier that they're all the same, that there is no difference between you and somebody else so that they can get that price down. It's a very common poker playing tactic or procurement tactic to get the price down. It's difficult in the commodity space because in many cases, that's real. Like it's true. It's easily interchanged. These products are designed to be spec driven and to be able to choose whatever is the lowest price. And so it's a little bit more real and it feels more risky in the commodity space to have a little bit more confidence and play some of the games to hold procurement back when you're dealing with something that is truly a commodity. But I think, one of the things that we find when we work with these individuals is that there are still ways to differentiate. We've just got to get that conversation off of price and product.
That's so true. And Travis, it's interesting that you say that just in terms of there's a difference between being in a commodity industry versus procurement telling you with your differentiated solution that you are a commodity because both happen, right? But even in the world where the commodity exists between like a very spec-driven equivalent level feature, integration, quality, other factors and attributes of a product or a commodity, there's still the wraparound services, like the way to differentiate. There are ways to still differentiate a commodity, but very often it can almost be in the obvious spot that's overlooked.
I say this quite a bit to our clients because a lot of clients say that they're in the commodity space. And theoretically, if there's 4 competitors and it's a truly commodity space, then the market share should be 25, 25, 25, and 25, right? That's a true commodity. And out of the 25 years that I've been doing this, how many times have we really seen 25, 25, 25, 25, or whatever that equal sort of share? It's pretty close to 0. So out of all the industries we played in, out of all the places we've gone, there's a reason one has a higher market share than the other, even if they're selling the same product. So the product itself, to Pete's point, the product itself can be commodity, true commodity. You're selling sugar, you're selling, a chemical that has a very specific chemical component to it. Those can be a commodity because you can get it from multiple people, the same exact product. But those services, your delivery time, your response to issues and problems, all of those things start causing that deviation from that perfect 25, 25, 25, 25. And those are the things that we need to find and be able to lean on during negotiations, no matter how you think you're commoditized.
One of the clients that we had before my time was a company that sold dirt. Can one of you walk through like how that was? I just think it's a great example to be able to explain like how you take something that's seen as a commodity and differentiate.
Travis, you want to take this one?
This is an example we use in all of our workshops. We've been using it for a long time. Obviously, dirt is a commodity. It's pretty easy. You just go scoop it up and you can use it for road base or backfill. But the opportunity there was to buy through really understanding what the customer's needs were. They uncovered that, hey, not only is there a cost to the dirt, but there's more cost in getting the dirt, in the delay of the dirt, in the trucks and the drivers and all of these things. And so by coming up with a solution to reduce the amount of time that they wait in line, essentially making an express line a service, they were able to say, hey, if we can get you out of line and get you through faster, we can save you money. And by saving you money, are you willing to pay a little bit more, give some of that back to us to help us fund the cost of creating this express line, and you make more, so we both win on the back end? The customers were ecstatic about it. The one thing I want to point out about that story, and really where we go with that in a lot of our workshops, is one, we have to be able to understand what these services are and how they differentiate our products. But two, by having that conversation, it helps our customers understand where we differentiate. Sometimes our customers just look at us like, hey, sugar is sugar, to Jeet's point, or product is product. But by having these kinds of questions and asking these kinds of questions, the customer comes around to, yeah, that would really solve a unique problem of mine, and we would pay more for that.
So in that case, I mean, maybe we go down that track, right? Like, how do you go about figuring out what differentiates in a commodity kind of product?
I guess my answer would be like Travis, that the express lane. I mean, people are so accustomed to the TSA pre-check and everything else, and that's such a commonplace feature of our lives now. But 15 years ago, that was slightly more novel, and it was actually just through curiosity, really, that this sort of manager on site was talking to customers in a way that engaged with them and uncovered these opportunities. I think it's kind of the obvious place to start is talk to your customers and find out, if you were to invest in something and that to help them, what would that be? If what are their pain points, and just, you're not going to solve all of them, but then you can try to find the creative ways to meet what they're looking for, hopefully in a way that creates value for both of you. So I think it's the, almost the 5 whys, and kind of peeling back the onion to get to not only what someone would like to see different, but why they would like that and what that would do for them financially. Like, why would that have an impact to their business to the upside?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Pete. I like the peeling back the onion thing. I also think I see clients asking questions to their customers in a good way about their products and services. There's a lot of conversations that product development has, marketing has, sales has about speeds and feeds and my specific product. And we encourage our clients to kind of think about one step a little higher in starting the conversation, which is, what business problems do you have? What's overall the context? What's preventing you from making more money, being more successful? Those open-ended start to the conversation doesn't pigeonhole them to that specific product or service. And oftentimes we see that, you jump in and you talk about the specific product and you lose context of the business implications up top. And so the starting point also in those conversations is important. And starting with business understanding is very, very important, especially with sales, because oftentimes salespeople have a tendency to go, I know my customer really well. I know their birthday. I know their kids' birthdays. I was invited to their bar mitzvah, whatever it is. Those are all great things. You have a personal relationship with them. But do you know their business? Do you know why they missed their fourth quarter earnings? What's preventing them from making money? And then the salespeople kind of back off going, no, we don't have those kind of conversations. I know a lot about my product and their needs relative to the product, but not that business level.
Jeet, to your point, I think this is really what starts to create that pricing power, right? We're bringing that together. It's not just what should our product be priced and how do we communicate it, but it's really understanding where that problem is, that customer problem, and now we're solving it for them, which elevates us from the position of being a sales guy to that trusted advisor, right? You are now someone that I'm going to go to as a problem solver, and that gives you pricing power over other people. We talk about it in the workshops all the time, and this is really, in my opinion, the biggest key that all salespeople should be thinking about. If it's truly a commodity, they're not going to ask you. They're going to look at your price and they're going to go with whoever. The minute they come to you and say, hey, so-and-so is offering me a discount or this same thing for a lower price, then you know that, hey, there's a reason they're talking to you. We need to figure out what that is, because if they really were caring just about the price, go get it. Go buy that price. That's how commodities work. So the minute they come to you and say, hey, so-and-so's offering me a lower price, are you willing to match it? Yeah, sure. I'm willing to give you something, but there's a reason you're talking to me. What is that reason? Let's see if we can figure that out. That's the value piece.
We use this term poker player. I don't know that we've talked about it that much on the podcast. It'd be good to say, like, what are the different buyer types? And then why are poker players seemingly so prevalent in commodity industries?
People think of the three major buyer types. You had your value buyers that are looking for ROI. They're pretty careful about the metrics and on which they purchase and the decisions that they make. Then you have your price buyers that are really looking for just what it sounds like, the lowest price, strip everything out, low spec. And then you have the relationship buyers, which generally rely on you to deliver your expertise and help them make a decision about what action they should take. And all those are pretty distinct and are intuitive to most people. But then oftentimes what happens is when you're selling into a procurement team, they will pretend like they are a price buyer and all they care about is the lowest price. But when actuality, they might actually be a relationship buyer or a value buyer and love you for the value and financial impact that you have in their organization. But they want to sort of fool you into thinking you've got to, sharpen your pencil and give them the same great product or service and just try to get it for a lower price. And I think that is probably increasingly prevalent in commodities for exactly the reasons Travis stated, is because sometimes the product is fungible from one vendor to the next. The services may not be, but product being kind of half the stuff, they try to lean on that and kind of make you think that's where your focus should be, and you should be a little bit scared and worried they'll buy from someone else. And that's kind of where the poker player is found.
From an example perspective, just because you had some recent workshops, Travis, what are some of the tactics that you have seen lately or heard through sellers that have come their way from people kind of playing poker and bluffing to get prices down?
Oh, well, they're going to do the biggest one is everybody's a commodity, right? Everybody's the same. Nobody's different. And this is where it starts to get, the aggression, the change, hey, I'm your friend today, but I'm not tomorrow, or let me be your friend. They're the bad guy, I'm the good. Like, these are all tactics that everybody knows procurement has been developing over years. You listen to any procurement podcast on negotiation, and they talk about pushback, but not too much, right? We don't want to lose the account. The real question, or the real kind of thing that bubbles to the surface when we start to talk about these buyer types, is why do they do it? Because it works, right? Because they know that companies, they know that they're working in some sort of a slush level so that they can offer the discount. What customers don't know is how much did you work into that? How much have you put in there? So they've learned to push hard and push hard and push hard and push hard until they get that slush out of the pricing and back down to what everybody else is supposedly paying for that product. And so if you're kind of working in a pricing space where you're thinking, okay, here's what I want, so I'm going to add 10% so I can give them a discount, you have no pricing power, right? You're going into there giving them a price and teaching your customers to push you for a discount. And it's going to come back to bite you, because they're going to push harder than you can give, and it's going to take your slush fund plus a little bit more every time you play that game. You've got to learn to be able to have the confidence to say, I'm happy to talk about price, but I'm not going to do it without value. We're going to talk about both of them together.
I kind of think of it as in like three categories. One is, it's their job to create an environment where we feel like it's competitive. So they're going to tell us about competition, about the other guy giving me more than what you're giving me. So there's a sense of competition. So they're kind of brewing that. The other thing they like to brew often is time. Some perspective, you're gonna lose us by this time. There's like the use of time becomes a weapon for them. And then the third is they want you to feel like you have more to lose than I do. So there's a level of loss that they want you to know. You're going to lose. I'm not going to lose, because I'm just going to go from Travis to Pete, and they're about equal. So I have nothing to lose by changing. You have everything to lose by not being able to service me. So those three things, the procurement, especially a poker player, I feel that they have really refined those three things. And they use a combination of those three things at any given moment in time to increase the pressure, increase the heat on your chair. And the best way to neutralize that heat, in my opinion, is what Travis said, which is to keep the conversation on the value aspect. And the other is knowing what your walk away is and literally walking away if they push you too far. That piece, and I'm sure we're going to get into this a little bit later in the conversation here, I think that piece is critical that we see a lot of clients, they say this is my walk away, and that walk away price or whatever it is starts going down as the heat rate gets raised because they don't want to lose that customer. They don't pressure test that walk away number, which they should based on the value that they deliver.
Yeah, and unsaid, Jeet, but you're nailing it. It's if you know what type of buyer and customer you're dealing with, it's a lot easier to respond to this. So if you know you're dealing with a poker player and they're playing games, then you can keep the focus on the value. If you've truly identified your buyer as a price buyer, then they really don't care about the other stuff and you have to pull out. And so your strategy is completely impacted. And so by, the determination of who you're dealing with across the table. And so that's why I think our backbone framework is so powerful, because if you have these 4 buyer types and you kind of know who you're dealing with based on a number of tells to kind of tag that individual person and or the account, both of them individually, then your behavior can be adjusted and you can strategize your negotiation tactics.
Should we talk about the pressure test, or how do you pressure test for value? I think that seems like an interesting place to go down.
I'll start it off. The biggest mistake that we see all the time is people talking about value at the time and moment of negotiation. I mean, that's probably the worst time you could possibly bring up value is you're arguing about a price point or terms of a contract, and you're talking about value at that point, and you never brought up value ever or pressure tested your numbers on value with the using team. Like if you don't do any of that, then all of a sudden you bring it up at negotiation, the validity of those numbers, dissipate pretty quickly when you do it. So, I mean, these guys know better than I do, but bringing things up 12, 18 months before your contract renewal and talking about the value elements, making sure that people understand in QBRs, what have you done? The quick tech support help that you provided, the turnaround time on a last second order, all of those little things, accumulating those over the course of the year, 18 months, 24 months, and then being able to speak it back to them at regular intervals so they understand it at different levels of the organization. All of those things go in part of value communication that needs to be a package. It cannot be at the time of a RFP or the time of negotiation. You just lose a lot of power that way when you do it that way. You should still do it, by the way. Not saying you shouldn't, but you just lose the power of the value when you do it that way.
It is obviously it's that timing. And in reality, we talk about the best time to uncover the value is that implementation, because that's when they're solving their problems and they're willing to talk to you about everything. So it's about that willingness. It's also about the way we ask the questions, right? P had mentioned those 5 whys before, but getting them to really uncover the problems that they're having and how they're trying to measure those and fix those problems allows you to then identify where you can solve for the greatest need, right? So there's lots of different ways. I'm trying to think specifically of commodities because we play in this space, and some of the places where we find differentiation or value that they deliver, and it is in the supply chain, right? Commodities are great, but when you deal with large quantities of commodity, right, supply chain is significantly important, because if it goes down, it shuts down everything. You just don't have enough to carry on. So it's that storage and it's that supply chain, how that's going to happen. Because of that, a lot of organizations will have multiple suppliers, right? Everybody wants the primary position, but it's like, you know what? You're not the primary because you're not the cheapest. I'll give you the secondary position, which gets less. That should be a more expensive price because that's the insurance policy, right? That's hey, they went down. I've got to have something in store for you and ready to service you when that need arises. And sometimes when it goes down for everybody, right? Especially in the commodity space. So there's lots of things to think about, and just thinking about, hey, if not this, then what? If you didn't have this today, what would your problems be? And okay, then we are protecting against that, or we are solving for that state.
Yeah, and Tracy, where what Travis just said might connect. It's like the concept of price value alignment, where that intersects with offer design is where you can put that concept to work. So if you were to say take something away when a discount is requested, a price buyer is going to say, awesome, that's exactly what I wanted. But a poker player is going to scream at you and say, no, I want all those great services that you deliver and help me save money and boost my revenue. And I don't want to lose that. So they get mad when they kind of realize that in exchange for the lower price they're requesting, that you're going to keep price and value aligned. And so that's sort of one of the key tells.
Jeet, when you were talking about like bringing value messaging earlier, we've got a little bit of like the later in the negotiations. Are there things in other parts of the journey that you think we haven't covered?
Yeah, I think the other key piece is to getting to know who the influencers are. I mean, I think oftentimes I'll see salespeople who are pigeonholed to transact with their customer's contact, whoever that one or two people are. And sometimes we don't see the salesperson really go broad within their customer's ecosystem. And we encourage that to happen. You need to go not just up, but broad. So you need to understand who the users are. Do you know the key users? Do you know who the executive decision makers are? Do you know how they get influenced, where, when they get influenced? All of that company mapping of individuals, influencers, and evaluators is so critical. It's important, and it'll pay so much dividend when it comes down to renewal time and negotiation time to know those individuals. People that don't know their buying center well and who kind of is just responding to questions, we find those have the poorest hit rate of winning a business.
And G, you could imagine if the person you're talking to is like the supply chain rep, they're 100% going to be a poker player. But
that's right.
You're talking to
it's almost guaranteed.
Yeah, the engineer in the production line, they might be a relationship buyer because they interact with your team every day and they love what you do for them. And so if you don't have any of that sprinkle of relationship appreciation in the buying decision process, you're sort of pigeonholed.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think we pause there for now. Like there's probably a lot of other places we could go with the poker player in particular. And people seem to love this concept just in terms of like how to pick up on the tells, how to figure out how to call the bluff, all those things that we touched on in this that I think we can expand on in the next episode. So thank you for doing this. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.